This is Jazz Radio 94.1 FM on the Gold Coast, and you're listening to Drive Time with John Reid.
Time now to talk to one of the greats of Australian jazz, guitarist George GOLLA. George, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon.
It's a pleasure, John.
You were just telling me you emigrated from Poland back in the 50s.
In 1950.
Right, and that was after being in Germany after the war. It must have been a very interesting time for you.
Well, bear in mind that most of the migrants from the eastern part of Europe ended up either in Austria or in Germany. If you wanted to get away from the Russians, that's the only place you could go. You had to go west. So we were in various migrant camps in Germany for 5 years, and then emigrated from there to Oz.
And when you got to Australia, did you take up becoming a musician then? You said you played the saxophone.
I was 15, you know. I mean, I did a variety of menial jobs. I was a grease monkey in a garage greasing cars, and then I was in a Caltex depot in Mittagong, and then for a very short time I was a local government clerk in an office. But from there, at the age of 21, I finally went to Sydney to be a full-time musician. Yes, I played the saxophone and the clarinet.
And then turned to the guitar.
Yeah, well, I had sort of strummed the guitar all along. My father had the proverbial guitar under the bed, you know. I always played a little bit of guitar, but I wasn't all terribly serious about it. But what had happened is I had never actually really heard a fine guitar player, and the moment I did, that threw me right across to the guitar. As the Americans started to come out to Sydney, the big shows, and Red Norvo came with the guitar player and all that, and I thought, wow, that's really what I want to do, and I did.
And well, you had a very successful association with Don Burrows over the year.
Yes, that's right.
How did that all start?
A long time ago, I was playing with a group in a place called the Club 11 here in Sydney, which is long gone. And Don was the star attraction with his band. So they were packing up when we started to play, and he came over and said, "Oh, that sounds nice." He said, "Would you like to play with me and the newly arrived bass player from America," which was Ed Gaston. So we started playing as a trio. We did a couple of TV spots and we rehearsed a little bit. One thing led to another. It became the Don Burrows Quartet.
Yeah, and it ended up lasting about 40 years.
Yeah, a bit more. And then but in between that period, I mean, none of this was full-time. In between, we were doing other musical work, you know. I was doing session work and recordings and so forth. I was flat chat, really very, very busy for many, many years.
Well, you obviously worked with some wonderful musicians, both here and overseas.
Indeed, I've been very fortunate, John. Yes, I've met so many of my previous and subsequent favourites, and actually had a chance to play with some of them, you know, which was just marvellous.
Well, who are some of the people that you've really enjoyed playing with the most over the years?
Well, Dizzy Gillespie was one of them. The Bryce Rhodey Quartet, which I was a member of, got the job of backing Dizzy Gillespie on a tour of Australia, which we did. I mean, it was way too early for me in my musical development, but there it was. We played with Gary Burton, Charlie Bird. We were even on the same bill, didn't play with, but we were on the same bill as the Oscar Peterson Trio. We played in New Zealand and in Melbourne. That's the Oscar Peterson Trio with the drummer Ed Thigpen.
Well, you also toured with Stefan Grappelli, and that must have been...
We didn't tour with him, we made a record with him. We toured, well, we were on the same bill as his group. We never actually played the concerts with him, but he wanted to make a record with us, which we did, which has been conveniently forgotten in his discography. It doesn't exist, apparently.
Oh, well, that's a pity.
Well, that's the fate of Australian jazz, you know.
Well, speaking of Australian jazz, we do have some great venues for jazz here, but it's always been a bit of a struggle for jazz musicians to make a living. How do you think things are going? Are they improving in Australian jazz?
Certainly not, John. No, I mean, you know, I hate to be a doomsday merchant, but no, I think it's just a matter of time. The talent is here, but it's just for argument's sake, you know, when you read that some American guy, like I was reading about Don McLean the other day, who wrote Starry, Starry Night and all that, in the first year, like 3 or 4 million records. Well, you just can't do that here.
Yeah, that is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, and they support themselves. We don't support ourselves. We can't wait to... When somebody starts to play well, they say, oh, he's world class, he's almost as good as Fred Bloggs from somewhere else. Well, the Americans don't have that problem.
Well, what do you think the answer to it is? Are there ways of improving the situation?
more people to come and pay for jazz and buy Australian jazz records. How many Australian jazz records do people buy? I've probably made about 20 records. I don't think I've earned enough to buy a pair of shoes, you know?
Yes, it is difficult, isn't it?
Oh, it's impossible.
Well, you're going to be coming up to the Gold Coast pretty soon. In fact, you're going to be performing on Sunday at South Tweed Sports with your mates Ed Gaston and Alan Gilbert. That should be fun. I'm
really looking forward to it. We had a rehearsal the other day and it felt great.
Yeah, and you've worked with those guys over the years many times, haven't you?
Well, Ed Gaston, as I said to you, you know, Don said form a trio with a newly arrived Ed. Ed got married about 50 years ago, and I played at his wedding, so I've known him ever since. I must have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jobs with Ed. He was a member of the Don Burris Quartet for about 20 years.
Well, George, we hope you have a great time up at South Tweed Sports. That's happening on Sunday. It's George Golla, one of our great musicians. He'll be at South Tweed Sports on Sunday afternoon. 6 to 4, news, sport and weather coming up at the top of the hour.